Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, author of Visualizing Happiness in Every Area of Your Life and host of this podcast, Incredible Life Creator. And today I have with me Miss Leslie Capps. Hey, Leslie.
Hey, how you doing?
I am good. And where are you calling in from today? Where do you live?
Right? I live in Wyoming. So I was thinking today, it's that weird time of year, right?
Hmm.
But then I thought every time anymore is a weird time, but we get really cold mornings, super
Uh-huh.
hot afternoons. So you never know what to wear.
Uh-huh. That makes sense. That actually happened in Georgia today. I woke up this morning and usually it's been hot, hot, hot. And I put on the warmest robe I could find and I just kept it on.
Right? You're like, this feels great. I'm not ready. But sometimes I go outside to get warmed up, right? You keep the house cooler and yeah.
Exactly. Just so people can know you, I'm going to go ahead and read your bio. So, Leslie Capps is a business coach, course creator, and storytelling strategist who has walked the path of finding and losing joy, only to rediscover it through aligning with her true passions. With a career that spans working for a university, leading nonprofits, and even owning a ranch, Leslie has experienced the highs and lows of life, each step bringing her closer to understanding the power of living authentically. Today, as an international best-selling author, speaker, and honorary board member of the General Federation of Women's Clubs, Leslie empowers entrepreneurs to tap into their own stories, unlock their potential, and live extraordinary lives. By combining mindset mastery with strategic storytelling and course creation, Leslie guides others in creating businesses that are not only successful, but also deeply fulfilling. And that's what we want to talk about, being deeply fulfilled.
Right? Right? Always the challenge.
Yes. So you're a storyteller. Tell us
Right?
your story.
Tell us the story. Exactly. Um, well, it's like all good stories, right? The weaving, the twisting, the turning. Um, but I will say I've always had a passion for helping people as well as a passion for outdoors. So, right, trying to weave those two and sometimes followed one path and another path. Um, yeah, so my journey took me, I think when I graduated from graduate school, I thought I landed my dream job. I was a director of the Multicultural Resource Center. And I was like, I love that, right? I believe in equity, equality, like all those words. So I'm really passionate about that cause. But what I found, and I thought, a university, it's going to be the best place because my brain is always like, we could do better. How can we do better? We can figure this out, make this more efficient, and yada, yada. The university is the worst place for a person like me. I would say, we could do more. We could do better. Nope. Always done it this way. Well, we could serve more students. Nope. Always done it this way. So it was a little, not going to lie, it was a little bit soul crushing, but got an opportunity to go to Alaska and guide sea kayak trips. I was like, okay, when are you ever going to get this opportunity again? Maybe those are the key words for me, right? When the door opens, I'm like, sure, why not? Um, so did that for a couple years, ended up that sort of led to when I wasn't doing that I was training horses and mules. Um, ended up meeting someone and purchasing land together, building a ranch together. And kind of aside, my granddad and grandmother had a farm in Illinois. So my brother and I always spent summers back there, and he knew every cow by name and like how many twins they'd had, and like he could recite their whole genealogy. And I thought, like, that is weird, right? I mean, it's just a weird thing, like, good for you. Well, when I had cows, I could recite what their calf looked like last year, what, how, if they'd had twins, if they'd lost one, tell you the genealogy. And that is definitely not my skill set to remember the fine details. So it had to be a generational thing. Um, but yeah, that was so, and there I thought that was really the pinnacle too. Like, I love that life. extremely a lot of work, so rewarding. There's something super fulfilling about being in that constant life cycle, bringing calves to life, watching them grow. Of course, then you're sending them off, but that's maybe a different story. Yeah, and then the partnership disintegrated. And so then it was on to the next chapter. Ended up working in the nonprofit sector. Again, probably not a really good fit for me, right? That like, let's do better, let's do different, let's do whatever. And yeah, so I think that I was probably always destined to be an entrepreneur, and really combining what I can do with nonprofits as well as what I can help people with as far as their business has really been, yeah, maybe the ultimate joy, and finding that sweet spot of helping and having flexibility.
Yeah. It's nice to have flexibility. It's nice to have choices.
Right? Absolutely. And I think we get in situations, and I'm sure you've seen this too as well with the people you work with, that when fear takes over, we can't see that we have choices, right? Our head gets all those weeds, they become even scarier, like bigger monsters in our heads, and just everything shuts down. And sometimes having that other person say, you know, it's like, it's okay, right? Like, feel that feeling, but really it's okay. You've got these things going for you, whatever they are, we can make this work. So yeah, absolutely. It's keeping in mind there's always a choice, right? And sometimes the choice is to make no choice.
Wow. Talk more about that, because I always thought that either you're growing or you're going down. There's no like stable. So when
Right.
you make no choice, what happens?
Yeah, that is interesting. I would say that you're always gonna make a choice somewhere, right? But
Mhm.
a lot of times if I can't make a choice, I just walk away, right? I don't either yes or no, or typically I would do no if
Mhm.
I can't internally come to a resolution pretty quickly. Then I'm like, okay, there's some reason I'm not. But I do think you can, I see this with sometimes people around me. We can reach homeostasis where we're not choosing to grow,
Uh-huh.
and we're not really choosing, or we're not really going backwards either. Like, we're just kind of hanging out. I was talked with somebody on a podcast the other day about retirement, or that sector, and she said something about retirement. I said, like, I'm never gonna effing retire, right?
Uh-huh.
I don't want to sit around and drink beer and fart and whatever it is retired folks do, but because there's something bigger I need to do.
Mhm.
um and I see people, like, in totally their choice, right? But just hanging out in that spot of, like, we got to retirement, we're just hanging out here.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. And that's a choice. You can go
Right.
the way that you want to go. And, you know, a lot of times people have worked very hard their whole life and they didn't have their own time, or they had responsibilities or family things, all sorts of family things happen in lives. And maybe they just thought to themselves, I did all this work. I would just like to rest, because don't we deserve half and half? I always think life is half and half. So if they didn't get their half the whole three-fourths of the way through, I can understand why they want to have peace and relaxation for the last part of their life.
Right. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, not saying it's good or bad. I just, and I tend to work with those type of people, right? Who say, like, I got something bigger.
Mhm.
Um, and that's gonna carry me on. My personal hero is Gloria Steinem. And I grew up in a super conservative, super religious, middle class community. So truthfully, I'm not sure how she got in my head. But once she was there, right, I couldn't let loose of her. So, and you know, she's 90 and she's still out there, committed to her values and the way she would like to see the world. And so, yeah, so for me, it's just so inspiring. And, you know, whenever I think, what am I doing here? That I'm like, look at Gloria, 90 and still out there
Yeah.
working to better humanity.
And it is inspiring, and there are a lot of people like that too. I think of Dr. McGarry. She is, I think, 103 or 104 now, and
Oh my gosh.
she's not like practicing, I don't believe, but she's out doing podcasts still. You know, like my goodness, why? Because she wants people to be able to take care of themselves and mothers to be able to take care of themselves and their babies. And that's what
Right.
she's done her whole life, and she's committed. Obviously, she's committed.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, I wonder, yeah, when you get to that age, right? It's still such a burning thing.
Mhm,
That like it just becomes who you are
mhm.
to talk about what you love and what you do for people and still continue to help them.
Exactly. And it can be anything. I mean, for some people, I mean, I like to paint. So some sometimes it's whatever it is that gives you that joy and gives you that contentment that, we talk about flow. You just sit there
Right.
and you flow and you're just like you don't need anything.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. For sure.
So I told you before we got on the podcast that I really love animals. And you had a ranch. Do you still have any animals now?
I have a blue heeler dog,
Mhm.
and he's very bossy, very opinionated, very structured. We have a schedule. I was even telling somebody, like, he comes up with his own games. So he has one where he sits on the landing and he spits the ball down to me, and then I toss it back up to him. And now we've added on where he runs down to the bottom if there's a bunch of balls at the landing and I toss them down to him. But he's um, so obsessive compulsive that he catches the ball and he won't just set it down there. Nope. He walks up to the stairs and places it on the stairs. And then he's ready for the next one. Um,
Wow. He's
right? Yeah.
particular.
Oh my gosh. There's rules. Talk about rules.
That is awesome. Now now you've got to have some cow stories.
Um, well, you know, the one that comes to mind, yeah, there's always lots of cow stories though, is one summer we had buffalo. We got a couple of young buffalo and to raise them for meat. And my spouse he said, well, let's leave him in the corral and we'll feed him grain. And that is just so not me. Like I like critters to be out doing their thing, right? So I said, give me a couple days and then let's see what happens and turn them out. And I tend to talk, even to animals, right? Like I talk to myself, talk to animals, whatever. So they became very accustomed to me and my voice. So we turned them out and they're herd animals. So of course they kind of hung out with the cows, but I would go out and talk and they would hear me and they would come to the fence and get their grain. Um, and likewise, like, so then they got very habituated in the sense of the time. So you could even pull into the drive if you were late or something, they would be standing there at the gate waiting to be fed, these big buffalo. But one day I was out working in the garden and I happened to look up and I called them Stumpy and Ray. One had a stump and the other one looked like Ray, my granddad, right? Kind of kooky, but and Stumpy was there at the fence. He was like pacing back and forth. I thought, okay, I'll go feed him, right? And I wonder where the other one is. But I didn't think much about it. And so fed him and he's still there pacing. I thought, okay, this is like, he's trying to tell me something. So I happened to look down the fence and Ray had jumped over the fence because they are jumpers, right? And was headed off with the neighbor's yearlings because, hey, a new herd. And like my interpretation, right, is that Stumpy is trying to tell me, look, he's out, there he goes. So we had to go round up the buffalo.
And how hard is that, or how easy is that?
Yeah.
They're
Well,
big, right?
right, it's a little bit, they can be a little bit peckish. When we would move cattle, it would be sometimes hard to separate them off from the cattle because they wanted to be with the herd. I know people, they run into pickup trucks, like full head on and busted insides. And these two were fairly, not super, aggressive. And so it was a matter of getting on a four-wheeler and kind of running him back to where he knew he was supposed to be. But right.
That
That was
sounds like
that
fun.
would freak people out too. They'd drive in the yard and we'd open the gate and they would just stand there, right? They wouldn't go anywhere, but they're like, are they okay? Like, can we? Yeah, of course, you always got to remember they're wild animals or animals, big animals, much bigger than you, right?
Mhm.
Having, the times the previous blue healer, uh, oh, he was notorious, just notorious. So he would run in and nip at horses when somebody was on a horse at the back of their hooves. So the horse would kick and, the person would kind of get flopped around, or he'd run in and grab the hind end of a cow. But if the cow would turn around and start charging him, he went directly for me. So I was always having to walk. Yeah. So, you're just hitting the fence to try and get over. And he was chicken hearted,
Yeah.
but he acted tough.
Mhm. All right. And then that's just to go into stories. Now you are an author, and you've written your own stories and you show other people how to write stories. So tell me more about that.
Sure. Um, I think we forget the power of our stories, and everyone has a very unique story. I've not ever met a person that didn't have something unusual or different or cool about their story. And I think as entrepreneurs, we also forget about that sales are emotional. Like, we need to connect with people on an emotional level, right? What does CFO mean? I don't know. It's just a label. So instead of using that, how do we create a story around even our introduction? And then that certainly can be taken on to what is it you want to do? What doors do you want open? And for me, I always talk about, don't think about sales. Don't think about, you think about your goal for the audience, right? As far as, do you want to entertain? Do you want to educate? Do you want to maybe even a little bit enroll, though that's got to be way down the line. But what are those things you want to do? And then how are you going to create the open door for people to come into your world, or to have them invite you into their world? Um, and it's just a mind shift, but makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah. So, um, are you mostly working with business people, or are you working with people who want to like do a what do you call it? A memoir? Like,
Yeah,
you know,
right.
where they
Yeah.
want to tell their life story?
Right? Mostly business people. Not that I wouldn't be intrigued by something like that, right? I had a friend ask me, she's the president of a statewide women's organization, and she said, we've not done this, but I found it super interesting. She said, would you help me create the story of what I want my presidency to look like? And I was like, okay, like, I'm not even really sure, right, how we're going to go about that, but I think it's a cool idea. So, it's really about pulling those stories out of people. So often the ones we don't tell are the ones that are most important. Or we tell stories, the Gloria Steinem. I always told it from the point of view, I tried out for the boys basketball team in 7th grade because, like Gloria said, I could. It was Title IX, right? Billie Jean King. I was super empowered. And I think I made a crazy dare or crazy challenge, and said, oh, I could do that. And somebody said, well, I dare you to. So what angle, but that's not really important in what I do now, right? That aspect of it. It's more important, and I'm more inspired and connect more with people on the fact that just she's always been the voice in my head. So yeah, I think helping people pull out those stories. And then what voice, this is so important too, right? What voice are we telling our stories from? Are we the hero, which is what we want to be, but sometimes we fall back into that other place and can leave people in a strange emotional space, because we always want to leave people on high, however we're interacting with them.
Exactly. So I know, first of all, just telling your story is very vulnerable.
Absolutely.
Even if it's a good story, it's still very vulnerable because this is your story and you're just coming out raw. Here I am. This is me. This is what happened, or this is how I think. So, what questions do you use? What kind of questions do you ask people to kind of gently pull that story?
Right. That's a great question. I think it's more of listening. um, I think once you start the conversation and you're just curious, and I tend to ask, I tell people, like, I'm going to get all up in your business, right? Because I ask a lot of questions and I'm very like, well, how does that connect to that? And what does that mean? And explain and that kind of thing. Um, but I've never found somebody be offended by that. Typically, we want someone to understand us, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so coming from that genuine, and then I start to hear, like I start to hear the patterns and the taglines and the words that simplify. Some guy, for instance, he said he was a CFO. I was like, okay, what does that mean? And so he kind of went in this long story. And I said, so you help businesses get more cash? And he's like, yeah. And I said, and you're strategic about it? He's like, yeah. And I said, so like you're a cash strategist, right? It's like, well, yeah. I said, okay, that makes more sense to me. And I kind of have some idea than a CFO. So yeah, I think it's that kind of combination of being super curious and really listening to the words people are saying. I think we always say the right words. Sometimes they're in the wrong order. Sometimes they're kind of hidden in the weeds. Sometimes they're 20 minutes in when they could be like right at the top and be the end of then you could have that exchange because the other person would go, oh, I get it.
Yeah. And just the way you summarized, CFO is he's a cash strategist. I know even coming from like the medical industry and wanting to write something for the general public and and all I know is those words that I know,
Right.
but they don't know the words, or some people know the words, but it's like, how do you explain things in a way that people get it and it sticks? Not where they have to go look up every third word.
Exactly, right? Or, I think our attention spans are super short, right? So if somebody says a word that we don't understand, or another example, someone I know did a presentation recently and it was on KPIs, and he had a little tagline, AARRG, maybe. They called ARG. And then he had like a character of a pirate, with the whole thing, the eye band and the parrot on the shoulder. A total disconnect for me, right? Like
Uh-huh.
I have no idea what he said because I got so squirreled off. I'm like, how does a pirate relate to KPIs? Like, I don't get it in my brain, right? I
Uh-huh.
don't get it. I don't get it. So, like, anytime you do something like that, you lose a person.
Mhm.
And the same with words, right? We know what they mean. So I work with quite a few IT people because they speak a different language. It's
Mhm.
like, how can we humanize that, right?
Exactly. So people know what you're talking about. Because if
Right,
they
because you
don't know what you're talking about, when there's confusion, then there's no communication. If there's no communication, there's no sales.
right, and not only sales, it's like you can't refer people.
Mhm.
Um, somebody recently that I still not quite sure what he did, but at some point I was like, okay, well, we're about to run out of time. I said, so how can I refer you? And he said, well, I can help everybody. I was like, okay, we could argue that. Like, I don't really have time for that. But I say, here's the point. I can't refer you to everybody. It is entirely not possible. So you're going to have to get way more clear on who it is you want to be referred to.
Yeah, and clarity is so important.
Right? Makes all the difference. And I think really people, there's a certain level of confidence too, right? When you're clear on your messaging, when you know who you serve, when you know what you do for them, not so much the how. Like we get hung up in telling people how, and that loses people too.
Mhm. That makes sense. So you do the storytelling, but then you also teach people course creation. So are those related? Do you teach them the storytelling and then the course creation, or are they two different things?
I would say everything's related to the story, right? How do we then turn a story or use our story to engage people to get them into our world and then take them to the next step, right? Of maybe either creating a course or group or whatever it is that looks like for them. And I think it's really about building community. And I would love your input on this. So I was just in a networking thing, and a very wealthy guy who is a coach, he said the things you shouldn't do. And one of them was collaboration. And I found that so interesting. And in my own mind, I was like, I don't think a woman would ever say that, right? But a man, I can see how that wouldn't be necessary for him.
Mhm.
But yeah,
It sounds like this is just my own opinion, right? But
right.
it sounds like, first of all, trust issues, like something happened in the past.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I've always heard, maybe it's true, maybe it's not. If you want to do something, well, do it yourself. But if you want to do something big, humongous, change the world, you need a bunch of people to help you.
Oh, we are like women after the own heart because exactly. I feel totally the same way. I was thinking about this stuff that's happened in my life, and I was like, I could have never done that without other people, right? It's so hard. And I really, even the word solopreneur, like I hope people will rethink that word because it sets us up to act like we are that island, right? And
Mhm.
I don't think there's anything in life we can do without having some sort of team around us, some sort of support. Um, yeah. And collaboration is the best thing ever. So
Mhm.
I'm so glad you said that because yeah, it's been rolling around in my head. I'm like, I don't know. Like, yeah, I can't really quite. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, everybody wants to do life a different way. So, but I think that one of the things that makes people feel maybe not good enough or sad or lonely is when they are that island.
Right.
So, you
Right.
know, I mean, I really like my space. I'm kind of half extrovert, half introvert, but I really like my space.
Right.
But then I also really like to be with people. But there's got to be a balance. So, but I can't imagine someone that just always wants to be alone, even if it's at the top, all by
Well,
themselves.
yeah. Yeah. And he was the one running the networking group, a couple networking groups. Right. So it's interesting. And I'm sure there's some in his head, there's some tweak about collaboration that he says not to. I'm gonna have to delve into that because yeah, just as a blanket, I was like, I don't think I'm buying whatever you throwing down here. Like, I can't drink that Kool-Aid, man.
Maybe next time you see him, you should ask him a question, say, "Specifically, what do you mean by that?"
Right? I think I
He might
will.
mean something totally different, because I
Right?
think he's collaborating because he has a networking group. That I call that
Exactly.
collaborating.
Right? Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah.
Okay, so anyways, back to the courses. So when people are doing courses, what are they doing courses on?
Right? Well, I think you can, we just take our expertise, right, and turn that into a course. And yeah, I think e-learning is huge. I think it's a great addition to somebody's portfolio, if you will, of
Mhm,
services because people can enter at different stages that way. Um, yeah, it's something that's really, we know it's growing. I think it's going to even exponentially grow.
mhm. And then you also talked about groups. So are the groups to feed into the course, or is the courses and then people get to know each other and they go into groups? How does that work?
Right? So more well, multiple ways, right? I really believe in the power of collaboration. So creating groups around either particular topics or somebody I actually this afternoon we were meeting and we've met before and he has created sort of what he calls like his tribe of people that he refers to and that kind of thing. And he said, "Well, I'm thinking about once a month, meeting with everybody for 15 minutes." I said, "Why don't you do it as like a mastermind? How cool would that be?"
Mhm,
So, right. So not only myself, but then helping other people see the possibility in what we could do with groups and groups of people and our followers. How could we bring fans in and give them some of us without having to do one-on-one with
mhm,
everybody? Because at some point that gets overwhelming
mhm,
or I think of when we're creative, like that can take down from our creative time too, right? Like I really notice when I'm at in my happy zone, oh my gosh, like I have so many ideas. It's crazy, right? Like I just should start speaking them out and finding something to transcribe it. But I could never do all that those ideas. But it's just that's when I know like super creative. So sometimes like I can be like a fire hose for people. So it's like I need to step away and create a little bit here so I
mhm.
can come back and have creativity here with another person.
Beautiful. So if people wanted to connect with you, first of all, who are you working with? What services do you have and where do they connect with you?
Sure. Um, so I work with entrepreneurs, usually two different stages, either at the beginning and you're not sure where to go, like marketing. Marketing is just a mess, right? Marketing, messaging, because when we can get that messaging down, it really will streamline your business. It simplifies marketing, and you're going to start to attract more people as well as like getting a handle on marketing. I think uh, new entrepreneurs come in, they're like, I got to do all the things. I got to post here, here. Oh, nope. Let's simplify. Let's start one place and then we can build if you want to. And the other group, which is really interesting, is people ready or wanting to make that next step into something, right? A bigger platform. Um, they got a big mission and vision in their heart and they kind of hit a plateau of it, right? How do I get out there more? um and sometimes that's mindset, but a lot of it is messaging, weirdly, right? Our messaging has to up level. We have to step up with that, and sometimes that's a little scary step. Like things people have said are like, oh, I'm not, like I've thought about it, but I'm not really sure if I'm ready. It's like, yep, you're ready, like push you into the deep end here. So those are the two types of people I tend to work with. I do storytelling sessions. I do business coaching. If somebody wanted to create a course or looking for a platform to have a course, that kind of thing. And what was the third question? Oh, how to get
Yes,
hold of me.
yes. How do we connect with you if we want all these wonderful things?
That's right. That's right. So I do have a free I was gonna say, yeah, I could think it is kind of a worksheet. I'm blanking out that at free gift from less. So that's FREE gift, GIFT from FROM less, LES.com. And people can download that if they want. You can also get hold of me via Wild Woman Marketing. That's my business name. And it's just Leslie at wildwomanmarketing.com. Both or either of those avenues.
All right. So Wild Woman Marketing, is that a website also?
It is. Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So now I have a personal question for you. What gives you the most happiness and fulfillment in your life at this point?
Mm, always a hard question, right? Because you can see I'm not a happy person. Right? Because I tend to be pretty like, what gives me the most? The, so what I can think of today, what gave me the most joy today and a little bit of aggravation was Wiley, the blue heeler. He loves mud puddles. He runs through them, biting at the mud. I mean, he just gets a mess, but it is joyful, right? It is joyful. So that and the goldfinches are coming through. And I've had a 3-year project of the birds. I've not planted ever a single sunflower seed. They came up from bird seed, right? And each year I've kind of moved or made it so they would grow in a certain place. And so created a big hedge. And they're all blooming. And so the goldfinches are coming in. That and really it is working with people. And so I worked with a woman the other day and she said, oh, I just have kind of this anxious feeling about this next thing that I want to jump into, but I'm not really sure how to do it. And by the end, I was like, okay, come back to that feeling. And she's like, it's all bubbly and excited now. And that brings me joy, right? That helping people see what is amazing about what they do, because every product, almost without exception, right? There might be some that need tweaks or whatever, but there's great products out there that people really believe in, and they're just getting stuck in the weeds.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you so much for being here today and for your stories.
Oh gosh, thank you, Dr. Kimberly. Like I've super enjoyed the conversation and love what you're doing on the podcast and the great changes that you're helping facilitate in the world.
Thank you. So I have one last question before we finish. What is your best advice on living an incredible, amazing life?
Mm, best. So two things, I think. Um, like I know our society is really action oriented, right? Everybody says action, 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 gotta take action. For me, it's been a game changer to think. If I get bogged down in something, if my brain is going 100, I get up and walk outside and allow my brain to think. And maybe this kind of goes hand in hand with that is breathing. I do breath work almost every day, been a total game changer. And I think there's so much power in our breath, and we don't even realize that we're not even breathing, right? We're not used to those huge inhales and moving that energy through our bodies. And that's been, both of those have been super game changers.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Leslie.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
We'll talk to you again soon.